I'm always down to talk deer hunting. So been out grinding. It's hot here in Texas. But it's kind of one of those things to where it's not going to get any cooler basically from now until opening. And it's not far off, man. So right now it's just a lot of getting out, shooting my bow, keeping everything tuned, dialed in, ready to go. Because that's one of the things that creeps up on everybody. As you kind of season ends and you kind of let everything go to the wayside, and then all of a sudden, like a month before season starts, you're like, oh crap, I gotta go start shooting and get all this done.
Tejas Hunt Club Podcast is the podcast for you and you. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 21 of the Tejas Hunt Club Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon and and today I'm going to be sitting down with Chad Jones once again, but this time we're going to be talking about summer whitetail prep. Chad has a lot of knowledge on this topic about getting ready for whitetail season now and stacking the odds in your favor for when you start hunting during the season. So back on the Lazy CK Ranch episode where we talked about their Future Hunter Summit, it kind of went into talking about what we're doing, Meagan and I, on the place that we're going to be hunting this year. Moving feeders around, setting up cameras, putting out corn, putting out different mineral and things. So we've been getting some photos of does and fawns coming in. It's pretty cool. So we've actually have multiple does with twins. So on our last trip, we actually moved a all seasons blind to a spot that we're hoping will work out. We'll see. I was talking to Chad about mock scrapes and adding one close to this blind just to kind of get some more pictures to see. I think it's like a little travel area, but I just want to make sure and like try to add a mock scrape or two and give that a shot. So we actually filmed that and we'll have that video dropping on Sunday. It'll be July the 16th, Sunday afternoon. So if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, you'll get that notification. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, watch that video on Sunday and then subscribe. Then you'll get the notifications for the rest of our videos. Also on the YouTube channel, we went fishing a couple weeks ago with Barrett. We also did a podcast with him, which is really, really cool. If you want to hear pretty cool stories about backpacking through South America, that's going to be the podcast you need to go listen to. Barrett's a really, really good fishing guide. We had a lot of fun with him. And then we have 2 days, 2 videos of the 2 days that we fished with him, sight casting redfish. So check those out too on the YouTube channel and listen to that podcast. This weekend we'll be at a TWA convention. So if you're there, give us a shout, wave at us, come say hi. We're actually going to be trying to do a podcast with Matt Hughes, who's the coordinator for the adult mentored hunts. If we don't do it at the convention, we're going to try and schedule one to get him on the podcast to kind of talk about that program with Texas Wildlife Association. I know I mentioned before that we're going to do some gear videos, put them up on the YouTube channel, just some of the stuff that we use that has made our life a little bit easier. So those are going to be coming out real soon. I promise I won't just keep saying it. You'll get the notifications for those if you subscribe, follow. So those will be coming up here pretty quick. So enough of that stuff. We're about to get in the podcast. Like, follow, subscribe. As always, we appreciate y'all listening. Fun fact, we have surpassed over 1,000 streams of the podcast. So we want to say thank you for that. If you shared the podcast with a friend, we really appreciate it. If you haven't, do so they can join in on the fun. And let's get into the podcast with Chad Jones. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Tejas Hunt Club Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon McDowell, and I'm sitting with Chad Jones, a veteran of the podcast now. He's actually, if you look at our rankings right now, his podcast is sitting number 3 of all 20 that we'll have now. So that's pretty cool to get him back on and talk some whitetails. I know it's July. It's hot. But he's been out working and doing some stuff, getting prepared for whitetail season, and we have too. So I wanted to get on the podcast, kind of pick his brain on his strategy and maybe, implement some things myself and maybe help y'all out too in the process of what y'all should be doing now instead of waiting until, opening day of deer season to get your stuff started. So, Chad, welcome back to the podcast, man. Appreciate you getting on, and let's talk some whitetails.
Yeah. Appreciate you having me back, brother. And I'm always down to talk deer hunting. So, man, it's I've been out grinding. It's hot here in Texas. I mean, but it's kind of one of those things to where it's not going to get any cooler basically from now
Yeah.
until opening weekend. And it's not far off, man. So right now it's just a lot of getting out, shooting my bow, keeping everything tuned, dialed in, ready to go. Because that's one of the things that creeps up on everybody. As you kind of season ends and you kind of let everything go to the wayside, and then all of a sudden, like a month before season starts, you're like, oh crap, I got to go start shooting and get all this done. And so I just try to keep up with it really year round. Just don't really have that drop off. But no, yeah, I've been out hitting the woods a lot right now. My big thing is I've got several properties that I hunt. And each year, not all of them will produce the same caliber of bucks. It's kind of strange, and so I kind of gravitate to where I have the movement. Depending where I hunt, I've got at least I didn't even hunt one time last year. Actually, two of them I didn't hunt time last year just because I didn't have the caliber of bucks that I really wanted to chase, and especially majority where I hunt besides in Oklahoma, it's a 1 buck county. So I've got to count on the ones that I'm going to be hunting, and so. But yeah, right now, I'm trying to do a few little like micro food plots. We've got so many pigs here in North Texas that food plots have just never really done all that well because once the pigs get in and find them with that tilted dirt, they pretty much destroy them. And if you got cows on your place, that's just short lived. But no, right now it's a lot of just getting food out on the ground, or filling feeders, just getting that food source, that's naturally going to attract the does. It's going to attract, some of the younger bucks, at least in the area. And then as they're in bachelor groups right now, a lot of times that'll drag some mature deer in. I normally don't so this time of year, I run spin cast feeders, a few gravity feeders, but I just, without having to go down and fill them up like once a week, I'll run spin cast just to start getting the deer in the area and kind of used to it. But then normally right as the season kicks off, I'll switch to either just gravity feeders or just hand scattering corn, as I go in. But it's but yeah, so right now it's making mock scrapes, licking vines, just creating a social hub, for deer to use. Really all I'm doing is trying to get inventory. So I'm using food, I'm using mock scrapes, things to put a camera on just to see what's there. Because I'm trying to chase a giant. And so I've got a lot of pictures and videos of some decent bucks, but not really the caliber, that I'm after. And so, which isn't too disheartening. It's not uncommon in the summertime. You're not seeing a lot of, unless you just have a giant living on your property, it's not uncommon to not see those bigger ones. They might be living, a mile or so over on the neighbor's property, and they just don't get out and move all that much because it's super hot. And it's not like they're food, because with all the rain, there's food everywhere. And so it's not like they have to come to the corn, or any of your bait piles or anything, like they do in the winter when obviously food sources are scarce. So, but no, right now, just piling in food plots, licking branches, mock scrapes, just anything to help get those deer in there so I can get a picture of them and kind of see what that intel is. I make mineral sites. Really, it's just kind of a buffet of everything just because I want them to see it, smell it, hear it, get their curiosity up to come over. And at least if I can, get a buck he might not come to the feed or the food plot every day, but if he passes by, once or twice, get a couple pictures of him, I at least know he's in the general area.
Yeah.
And it's huntable, because it's not like, in the middle of the summer, they're walking 10 miles. You know what I mean? If you're getting pictures of one, even though it might be random,
Yeah, and that's kind of what we've been
close.
doing. Like, we got a couple feeders going. I did a mineral site the other weekend. We did a whole video, moved a blind and set that up. But that mock scrape and the licking vine thing, I have like no experience with. So like, to kind of tell me about that. And that was like something I was kind of looking at, because I have a spot that doesn't really make sense to put a feeder there, but I need some way. Like, it's like kind of like a travel area of getting to stop and see what's there.
So most of the time, I try to put mock scrapes, which, and for people that don't know what that is, you're basically just creating a replica mock of, a mock on the ground of what deer do as a social hub, as the rut's coming on. And then for the licking branch, the same thing. You're just creating an overhang branch or vine or rope or something that they can rub their glands on, to scent that, and that's their form of communication. It's kind of like the phone booth. They'll deer go to it to communicate, to see what deer's in the area, and whether they're coming into estrus. And so anyway, so for those, I don't really put them over like near my feeders all that often, just because if the deer come into the feed, they smell the deer's scent around the feeders anyway. So it's not like it's really a huge benefit, because they're already coming there for a reason. Normally I'll put those in some sort of transition from like bedding to food on a, well-used trail, somewhere that I know that they're going to utilize that location or that route, that creates a stopping point, and for one, it lets me get inventory, but for two, I want that set up, 20 yards or so from my stand. So as the season picks up and more deer start utilizing it, because some deer will actually go out of their way of a route they're using and go just to check that. I mean, I can't tell you how many bucks I have shot over a mock scrape. And, and so once they get using it, then they'll use it all season long. But the hard part is finding the location, because it's not like you can just go hang one in a tree.
Yeah, because I've seen actual scrapes that deer have made themselves, but I've never made an artificial one myself. So like, that's why I was like wondering how easy is it, or like how hard is it? Because I don't know. I just figured they would I figure you have to be pretty good at it to trick them into, oh, well, another deer put this here.
Not really. I mean, you'd be surprised. Now, obviously, they can smell your scent. If you're touching the branch or something, they can smell human scent on that, obviously. But normally, how I'll start them is, I'll just pee in the scrape. I'll just rake all of it back and then just pee. The deer can't really tell the difference between, a deer's pee or something else. I mean, they can smell, minerals and vitamins and, testosterone and things like that in it, but it's not like super alarming, because, I've tried this a bunch of different ways. I've tried, the just the artificial lures, like the mock scrape lures and things. A lot of those have like synthetic chemicals in them, and deer can smell whether that's real, or they can smell if it's synthetic or not, and so that's the only thing. I don't really, there's a handful of lures I'll use, like the Code Blue. I'll use some of their orbital gland, scent, like on the licking branches and stuff, just because I don't really have anything in it with. But on the ground, I just pee in those. And then once the bucks smell it, it's kind of like a dog that's marking his territory. Then, those bucks come in and they're like, hey, this is going to be my spot. I'll pee here. And then it just builds, and so, but not everyone that you put out is going to work. So I do multiple of them, and then I'll put cameras on them. But I try to always pick a spot that is the most likelihood that deer are going to pass it.
Yeah.
Like naturally, natural corridors, natural funnels, natural pinch points, somewhere that, I can set up, put a stand, and basically make that a kill spot for me, because it doesn't do you a whole lot of good to put one out and you start getting a bunch of deer coming in and using it, and then you're like, well, crap, this is out in the middle of a field. I have no tree, like you can't hunt it. So now all the deer are using it and you can't get in there.
So double duty, staying hydrated because it's hot, and it gives you ammo for your mock scrapes.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, no, it's. I mean, of course, you'll see. I know there's a bunch of videos about this. Whitetail Habitat Solutions. I know he does a ton of them on this type of stuff, and you know, it's nothing new. It's been around forever, but you know, just not people, you know, really known what it was or used it. The licking vines, you know, I didn't really always use those. I would do the mock scrapes, but the vines, it's kind of hit or miss, you know, on those. But it's once deer start hitting them, it's pretty awesome, you know, because I'll put a lot of videos, like on video mode and catch them, and man, bucks are just, you know, working. I mean, I've had them rip them out of the trees. Like, it's just it's pretty cool to watch them interact with it once it gets rolling. But then I've had some where deer will come up, smell of it, and, you know, then go make their own scrape, you know, 50 yards away. But that's the thing. Then at least if I find a scrape, a natural scrape that they're using, then I'll just take mine down and I'll plan to set up.
I can for sure see how like the natural ones, like finding those and being able to get them. Like the place we're hunting, I'm like, I've found 3 or 4 good trails where we put up cameras and kind of set where the feeder is. But like I tried to find a scrape or something like that, and I just have not found one on this property yet.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they can be tough, and a lot of people don't know that does will make them too. You know, and so it's kind of strange seeing a doe go out there and actually make a scrape on the ground. Most people always just envision bucks doing it, but does will actually make them too. You know, and so the thing is, they're going to make them. It's just, you know, depending on your habitat, like sometimes they like certain types of trees or bushes, you know, to you know, rub their scent and stuff on. Kind of like you always see, like when you've got cedar trees, you know, it's like just love to scrape cedar trees. You know, I don't know if it's just softer wood or they like the sap, or, you know, who knows, but you know, they're there. It's just, you know, it's a matter of finding them. And then, you know, sometimes you'll find one that is real active, and then all of a sudden it'll just dry up. It's like they'll just stop using it, and then sometimes the bucks will come back, you know, and, you know, reestablish those. And so it just, you know, it's not always a guarantee once you find one that's going to be the spot, but it does give you pretty high odds, especially coming into pre-rut, you know, because bucks are really going to those check, because they're going, hey, is today going to be the day? I've been a hot doe here, and now he's game, you know. And so, but yeah, so right now, man, it's just trying to get all that stuff established, and really just trying to get pictures, find out, you know, what I'm going to chase, and you know, who knows, it might be one of those years to where, you know, there's not a mega giant, and then it just turns into, you know, just trying to kill the oldest one out there.
The cell cam stuff, like I got cell cams up now. Like that's fun in itself. Like I've had to turn the notifications down because I had it at 6 times a day, but now I'm like turning it down to 4 or 3 or something like that, because I'm like looking at my phone trying to check to see what's there. But like that's fun in itself, just seeing, I mean, like the does and the fawns and stuff, and just like hoping that next picture is the one where he shows his face, you know.
Yep. Yeah. It's yeah, and then, you know, that's the thing. You can't be too discouraged. I mean, unless you live in an area with like high population of deer, which I don't. You know, it's not uncommon for me to not see anything but crows and raccoons. You know, for like days at a time. You know, and so you know, so part of that you're kind of like, dang, man, it's like, where are the deer at? And they're there. You know, it's just like I say, they don't have a need to get up when it's 105 degrees outside and walk a mile or mile and a half over here to eat corn when they can just eat all this new vegetation. I mean, with all the rain we've had, it's don't need food, they don't need water, and and right now it's a lot of the bucks. They're not really in the super thick stuff, because their velvet's growing. So a lot of times, they're at the edge of fence rows and pastures and hardwoods, somewhere that it's they're not where they're going to be in the fall. When all this stuff starts dying off, they're going to be in that thickest stuff possible once they're hard horned. So I don't get too discouraged that I'm not really seeing a whole lot right now. It's just I've had my hopes up. I've had times that I've had some bucks on camera that was pushing 200 inches, in late July and August, and I'm going, please just let this deer stay around.
I was just about to ask. I understand, not getting discouraged, not seeing deer, but I'm sure it's harder to not get too excited when you are seeing deer now and being oh, well, he's there and he's showing up and he's eating and everything else, and then you're but you got to wait till October 1st.
Dude, yeah, I had one. I don't know. It's probably been about 3 years ago. I had one. He was for sure in the 190s. I mean, unbelievable deer. And I had him from June, July, and about midway through August. And so I'm just please. And he was coming in. He was even coming to a spin cast feeder, which is not very common, but there was no pressure on the place. And so that's the thing. They can have a little bit of tolerance when they don't smell people, and see people. But he was coming in all the time, and so I'm just man, just hang on till opening weekend. Well, the farmers had come in and cut all the fields. There was some corn and just hay fields and stuff. They come in and cut all those fields right there at the towards the end of August. Gone. Never saw him again. And so it told me he was bedded somewhere in one of those locations. Just uprooted him up out of there, and he moved on. Plus, it was they weren't far off from transitioning to their fall range anyway. And so that was why I was I was hoping he would stay on the property, hang around there. But part of that is, I mean, it was fairly open. And I'm this isn't where he's going to live when fall comes, because he's going to want to go to the thickest stuff possible, the nastiest stuff he can find. And, he transitioned. And, of course, I never heard of anybody shooting him, so who knows. But yeah, he was – but yeah, it's frustrating because same deal. My cell camera would go off, and I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of pictures of him. I'm just dang, man, but that's the way it goes. I mean, it's, at some point, somebody else got excited about it. Whenever I was seeing him, somebody else was probably seeing him, unless he went to just a remote location that nobody hunted. But somebody else was probably oh my gosh, look at this monster, and then had their hopes up right before season, but yeah, that's just the way it goes, man. It's but yeah, it's exciting time. It's coming up. They're finally, they got about, I don't know, 6 weeks left of putting on some bone, and we'll see what it's all about.
You run the spy point cameras too. I got the Flex, the newer one, I guess, or the one that not the one that just came out, but the one that came out before that. So which ones are you running?
Well, I have all of them. So basically every one that they make, I have it. And so the Flex is obviously, their pictures are phenomenal. Now, we'll say that first generation of the Flexes, the batteries would drain super quick. And so I put solar panels on those, and I've not had any issues, and I run unlimited pictures and on those. But but yeah, so I bought some solar panels for those, and I have those on all of those cameras. And then I've also got the G36. And that's the other thing is I get solar panels for all of my cameras that are over major food sources or water holes. Somewhere gets a lot of activity just because I just get a lot of pictures and or a lot of videos, and anything's going to drain it. And then when you're spending $30 for
Yeah, yeah.
whatever 18 batteries, you're just this I pay for the solar charger just getting batteries twice. And yeah, so I have those. I've got a ton of the micros. I've got the new Link Micro 2, and then they just shipped us the new Flex S. So
Solar
it's the
panel,
Flex,
yeah.
but with the built-in solar panel in it. Yeah, I should be getting that one here in a couple days.
Nice. So like, what makes you?
That
You got like some that are cell cams and then some that aren't. Like, what will you use your cell cams more than just regular cameras, so you don't have to go in there and check them?
I've almost weeded out completely all of my non-sailor cameras. Just because with Spy Point, I mean, you get 250 pictures, for $4 or whatever it is, and so unless you're over a food source, well, essentially you can get just free pictures. I think it's what 100 pictures a month for free or something like that. Yeah, so if you just have it over trails, you can actually get by without ever having to pay for any plans. And so, but like I say, I put mine over bait sites and things like that, so I get tons of pictures of raccoons and things of that nature. But which is why I do the solar charges, because if not, I'd chew through batteries so fast. But yeah, I've pretty much weeded out all non-cellular cameras other than the Force Pro, and it's just because it's kind of one of those things to once I find a target buck that I want to go after, I don't want to go in there any more than I have to, and so it's made it so much more convenient. And plus, I've had to deal with a lot of trespassers, so going cellular, because I've had so many cameras stolen over the years from trespassers, and so having the cellular camera really helps a lot with that, because what good's it gonna do them, and and so I'll put the Python locks and lock cables on them so they can't pop it open. Still my SD card, but I hunted some public land last year, and somebody still they took, I guess, some bolt cutters or something and cut through the cable. And I'm like, the funny part is I had just changed out the memory card that like 2 days before when I went and hunted, and so all he got was like a couple raccoons and a pig, I think. All he got on there. So but
yeah, I mean, like,
sorry, man.
I don't understand it. Like, if you see somebody's camera there, especially, I mean, trespassing on private's one thing, but if you're on public land and you see somebody else's camera there, like, why even mess with it? Why even like touch it? Like, you could just as easily walk down 15 more yards and set your camera up and be looking at the same source or whatever you think that other person found.
It's curiosity kills the cat, man. They're thinking, oh, this camera's been here. He's probably got a giant. I want to see what's on it. And it drives them crazy. Same reason that you have people that go and poach on property they're not supposed to hunt on, as they know there's big deer in there, and they take the gamble. And, but I agree. I mean, I can't tell you how many cameras I walked by, and I never thought about, oh, I'm going to bust this thing open, and because what am I going to do if they have a big deer on it? Go sit there in their spot and try to hunt them? I mean, you know what I mean? But I see that debate over public land all the time of, well, it's not your spot and this and whatever. And but just hunter's etiquette, you know what I'm saying? If you see somebody in that spot, just move. Because more than likely, if they're not hunting the right way anyway, they've already blown that spot out. And it's not going to do you any good to sit there anyway. And so, But yeah, I don't know, man. It's what do you do? But no, the cell cameras, man. That's just changed the game. Of course, I've seen the articles coming out about Boone and Crockett trying to say that
Yeah.
bucks can't go in the record books and considered fair chase. My argument with that is a rifle fair chase. I mean, if you think about it, that camera is not guarantee you to kill a deer just because you get an instant information that it's there. Now, the argument could be, well, you could get a picture and go down there to where it's at right then and shoot it, but you're not going to do that with a bow and arrow. You see what I'm saying? Now, if you had a rifle, I can understand your argument. You're going, go down there where he's at that time and shoot him, but is that any less fair chase than shooting with a rifle?
Yeah.
He's 500 yards away.
Because, I mean, you have better scopes. You're looking through, you're using better optics in general, better rifles in general. Everything's better. I mean, the whole fair chase argument is kind of like, I think it's kind of getting a little bit played out because, I mean, there's literally, if you don't hunt in the most primitive way possible, you don't have a leg to stand on saying one is more fair chase than the other. Like
100%. I'll be honest with you. I mean, if they really wanted to nitpick it, unless you're shooting a traditional bow, then it shouldn't even be a conversation. You should just be your own category, on there of the only thing that's entered is if you're shooting a trad bow. As primitive as you can possibly get it, because are these compound bows that are, shooting at 5 times the speed
the
of
arrows, the broadheads, the fletchings, everything.
Right. So you could go on and on, because it kind of got brought up right when my 2018 buck was going into the record book. And so somebody sent the article to me and they're like, man, what if your deer gets rejected, because I was using cellular cameras. I didn't have a pic. It never went off the day that I shot him. But I had been using cellular cameras to get inventory, in which it did help me, set up in positions where I would get, trying to pattern that. And, but at the end of the day, I was like, well, if it doesn't make the book, it doesn't really matter. He's sitting over here on my wall. So that's all that
exactly
to me,
it was, right. And I was talking to Megan, brought up something the other day. We were listening to a podcast and they said something about a net score for a deer. And she's like, well, what's the difference? And I said, well, I really don't pay attention to the net scores because you use nets for fishing. But like if a deer scores that much, it scores that much. There should be no deduction. It's kind of like that same thing too. Like if it doesn't get in the book, it's not in the book.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, and that's always the debate on the scoring system too, of taking deductions, because my buck, had some pretty major deductions off of having a drop time. And it's like, why is he being punished for having these abnormal points? Yeah. And so at the end of the day, I think the scoring system should always be the total amount of bone that deer grows.
Exactly.
Is what he should get credit for. It doesn't matter which way they go. It's like, I've never understood that. It's mind blowing to me because you're just not giving a deer credit. For exactly.
And like kind of speaking of that growing, like what's kind of some of the stuff that you're feeding for those deer to grow like that? Well, obviously it's to some scale, but like, what kind of like supplements and stuff do you use or usually put out?
So I try, different things, but I use a lot of Antler Edge. It's essentially, it's got, peanuts and soybeans and vitamins and minerals. I'll use that a lot as deer are, putting on antler growth. I'll do like Lucky Buck minerals. So I'll do a lot of mineral sites, just things that they're needing, just salt, calcium, magnesium. I'll just, I'll kind of just just charge everything, all my sights with those. And then my feeders I'll normally fill, with like either like a buck ration, which is like a mix of corn and soybeans, like roasted soybeans. Just something that's a higher protein. So I'm trying to get them the essential vitamins, minerals, and as much protein as we can. Now, granted, you can feed them all that you want to. If they don't have the genetics, then they can only do so much. They only have so much potential, right? A lot of the places that I hunt, these deer have a very high ceiling of potential of what they can be, so I don't have a problem investing those things into that deer herd. But then as the season comes on, once they rub the velvet off, I don't go to the expense to putting a whole lot of that stuff out, because you're just wasting your money anymore at that point, But it's always an argument that people always, they're like, why do you go and pay to put out mineral sites, and you pay to put out extra protein and all this, because you can't manage the deer because I don't have a fence. I mean, they're like, you might be feeding them for the neighbor to shoot, and I'm like, well, if the neighbor shoots them, then awesome. It's like, I mean, that's just hunting, But I think that's how people get so caught up into it too, is because you feel like you're pouring out, investing so much into these deer, and then the neighbor shoots one, and you're kind of like, oh man, that's bullcrap, But it's like, I mean, you don't know that neighbor wasn't out there in 105-degree heat, setting his stands, doing all these things too.
And it could have flip-flopped.
But it's the ones when you. Yeah, it's the one that you hear of, like, well, actually, he didn't even have a stand. He just drove up and sat on the ground and shot one. You know what I mean? Like, that's the one you're like, I did all that for nothing.
Yeah.
But, you just never know. I mean, but when it does pay off, and you find a target buck, and all that time and investment, and work you put in, when it all comes together and pays off, then it's just that.
And I mean, too, you're even though you might not kill that big buck, but you are a part of hunting needs to be, stewardship of the animal. So you feeding that and spending that money is putting back into it. So no, maybe not this year, but next year you could take something out of it.
Yes, conservation ultimately. Yeah, because a lot of it right now is, a lot of the fawns, are just growing like crazy. And so I'm kind of doing a double duty. I'm putting out all these feeders, to feed these does, these, lactating does, and be able to, have a higher survival rate of these little fawns, and then of course I'm doing predator management. I'm going, shooting coyotes and, things that can hurt that population of the deer, just because, like I say, I don't live in a very, dense population for deer. So right now I've got a doe that, it's got a set of twins, and so it's like I'm kind of babying her, it's like I'm keeping out. I don't go in there and bother, and it's neat to see these little fawns. They finally started getting old enough that come out and they'll eat with mom, but she keeps them hidden quite a bit. But so I'll look at it the same way, but I don't shoot does here. It's I just kind of use them to my advantage. These does come in early season, they get used to the food, and then eventually the boys will come in, looking for them, and that's so I capitalize on trying to use them as my bait. But I don't shoot does just because we don't have enough of them, and I'd really like to see that population grow some, but it's getting so developed that
that's one of the main things y'all are fighting. We went up to Oklahoma beginning of June, and then we were coming back, and we passed through down North Dallas, North Texas, and everything, and I was looking at, like, it's literally like cornfield, housing development, cornfield, housing development, and then just like all around there, and I was like, holy cow, because we stopped, where was it, Melissa, at that Buc-ee's in Melissa. So Yeah.
See,
So we
I'm
went
right
through
next to
there,
Melissa.
and that's what I was like seeing. I was like, oh, okay, cool, because like I saw like Grayson County and all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, that's where this is. It is farther. It is farther north than I thought it was, because when it said like right outside of Dallas, I was expecting like a little bit closer.
Yeah. We're basically like right in between Dallas and the Red River into
It
Oklahoma.
was a cool area. I liked it. Well, for the little bit I passed through, it looked pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just it's been home to me. I grew up in McKinney, so I've lived in this area my whole life, and so it's been cool to go from not ever seeing deer, to having some world class deer, really. And a lot of that is because we didn't have a hunting season until 2012. So it let a lot of these deer get to the age structure to just start producing some giants, um, and there's been some big ones killed every year. And so there was a guy across the creek from me last year, one of the neighbors. He shot a 193 last year, and the funny part is he's only like 600 yards from one of my leases, and I never saw his deer on camera one time. And so so it just goes to show, I mean, during the rut, I mean, they can come from all over, you know. And so there might have been somebody that was watching that deer all summer and had a lot of high hopes, and then all of a sudden, he's 6 miles down the creek and somebody else shoots him. You never know. But yeah, just phenomenal deer. It's
Golly,
it's
193. Awesome. That's crazy. And then for him to be that close, like, what made him decide to go right when he should have came over to yours and went left,
Yeah, that's just hunting, man. I mean, for me, I try to, to put myself in the best position. You want to try to draw deer onto your property, because some of the places I hunt are small parcels, and so it's like, what am I going to do to entice a deer to come onto mine versus all this land or cover he's got over here, and so, at the end of the day, food is king. Deer can find water pretty much anywhere. So, watering holes, I mean, yeah, they're not, it's just an added luxury, but at the end of the day, it's all about food, and during the summer, you can have a lot of food, but they might not be coming to that food because they've got a lot of food somewhere else. But if your neighbors aren't doing, food plots or, feeding or baiting or whatever, if that's allowed, where you hunt, then, they're behind the game, because those deer will travel a long ways to find food in the winter, and so, but it's, hunting's just a little different here. It's, deer really pressured. They got a lot of pressure. So they're just, it's not like, I've hunted in Kansas, I've hunted in Illinois, it's kind of strange. It's almost like they're in little pockets of cover, and they get on, like, basically looks like big cattle trails to me, and they just funnel right through. And so as long as you're setting up in between that bedding area and food, you're in the, and so, I hunted in Kansas. I was like, dude, this is awesome. I mean, it's so much easier. And but for here, where we hunt, we don't really have, the terrain structures like that. So the deer can just come from anywhere, and that's the hard part, is you want to hunt the wind and, make all the right decisions, but you're going, these deer just pop up no rhyme or reason out of weird places, and you're just kind of like, it just makes it tough. So anytime I can get up against a big creek or a draw somewhere where, I can, sit in a stand where the wind's blowing out over that creek, somewhere I know that they're not going to be able to come in behind me, then, I'll try to position myself.
So like with that, like how soon or how late do you make those decisions on like where you're going to set up your stand? Because like you said, it's like, it's real easy to see their pattern now, but like obviously it's going to change a little bit. So like, I guess, like, how do you decide what you're going to do versus another one?
all all terrain features. Because you might put a camera out on a field edge right now, and you're getting a ton of deer just piling out into this open field. but as pressure picks up throughout the season, those deer might just be skirting along the edges and never come out into that field until well after dark, so I always get in some sort of, terrain feature, whether that's a pinch point, a funnel, a creek, like a little tributary, a field edge. I might sit like 40 yards in off of a field edge because a lot of times those bucks will, just skirt the edges of those fields where they're in cover. So if you were out sitting in your truck on the road, just scanning, glassing, looking over the field, you would never know that buck's in there because they're waiting after dark to come out. And so I look for those spots now, something that's got a lot of deer, relatively traveling through the area, but I have to envision what is this going to look like when all this cover's gone, all these leaves are gone. Because what I don't want to do is sit right on the edge of the field, all the leaves fall off, and now like I'm just silhouetted up there by myself, because I'm like, well, crap, I didn't get in a good tree that holds its leaves, like a big oak holds its leaves longer, and or cedar or something like that, and so I always look for those terrain features of, what is a buck going to want to do to travel from point A to point B, and where do I make that position? So if it's a property that I'm familiar with and I kind of know the history of where deer like to travel through, which is weird because they won't always go the same, take the same routes like year after year, sometimes, but I'll relatively know what that movement looks like. And so those, I'll normally have a stand up. I'll just go in, trim up shoot lanes, make sure everything's all clear. And I normally do that, in July because I want to have all that done and out of there. I know a lot of people are really hung up on going like, like Labor Day weekend, but you're in there a few weeks before opening day. And I don't like putting pressure on them. I want it to be, I'm out of there, hadn't been there in a while, and it's a true element of surprise, for those bucks. And so, so I'm just right now it's a lot of creeks. They love traveling creeks. So I'll go and set up off a creek, but a lot of it is just figuring out wind direction. Where can I set up on my north winds, my northeast, northwest winds, and access. Do these make sense for me to be able to get into these stands without blowing deer out? Because some of them, it might be it's a stand I got to go in, at midday, because I've got deer bedding, in areas to where I have to try to sneak in there at midday because trying to go in the morning when they're out on these fields trying to access it's not going to fly. So, so it just kind of depends on that. Now, if it's a place I've never hunted before, you don't know what you don't know. So those I'll go in and I'll put trail cameras up. Just, I'll look for trails. Obviously, I'll look for old rubs, old scrapes, just something that gives me some kind of history. And then I'll just put a trail camera on it. And times I'll get lucky and I'll find just a super heavily used trail that I can tell like just deer just going back and forth. So then I'll start trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together of like, okay, they're coming out of this right before dark and going this way. So they're coming out of bedding, going to eat somewhere. And then I get on an aerial map and I try to figure out what field is there, what are they growing, just trying to figure out what they're, where they're coming from, where they're going to. So then I can make a plan for, how to set up, how to get in there. And then those I normally won't put a stand, that's just a matter of like a hanging hunt, just same deal kind of going in maybe like, early morning or like mid-afternoon, something like that, taking, my climbing sticks or my saddle and going in and just see if you make magic happen.
I haven't gotten into the saddle thing. Obviously I'm a bigger guy. I don't know if they make those for me, or got to find a tree big enough. So right now I'm using, I got an all seasons blind and then I got a little pop-up blind I'll be using. So kind of definitely paying attention to the wind's going to be my friend. Last year when we set up, it was pretty good. Like we didn't have any blowout on us or anything like that. Like none of them like caught our scent, and we only tried to hunt on days where the wind was good, of course. But like now, just trying to make sure and set that up and make sure my wind's not blowing where it doesn't need to be is going to be a little bit challenged because we moved the feeder from where it was last year, but we'll make it work though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Unless, like I say, unless you're on a drop off or some big brush piles or something, those deer can just come from anywhere. And a lot of times bucks are going to circle downwind before they come to a feeder anyway, or if they're just scent checking for does, sometimes they don't even come to the feeder. They're just circling downwind, and they can smell if there's a hot doe that's been at that without even going up there. And so that's part of the strategy I like to use too is not really ever sit over the feeders.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking too, kind of being off of it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, because for one, you just don't want to be right up on it because then you got so many eyes on you. If you got a lot of deer, there's so many chances or opportunity of those old does that are real savvy. So a lot of times I'll set up off of them, and just try to hope that I get lucky and a deer skirts through, or I'm on a trail that leads up to it that, maybe on the downwind side, but I try to use an off wind. I just set up kind of like a 45-degree, so my wind's blowing in a direction where he's not coming down that trail, but he's still getting the wind coming off of the feeder or whatever. And so, so it's just, it just depends. I mean, it's kind of just different scenarios, but yeah, just right now it's trying to get inventory and then, just trying to suck as many of them over as I can. It's, that's all I can do at this point.
Yeah,
because a lot of people don't feed all year round, and I feed all year round. So I've got some deer that, they come to it every day like clockwork,
Yeah,
but
I think that definitely sets it apart, man. Like feeding more and like feeding better stuff, not just putting out like just corn, in your feeder, and kind of set you apart from either what everybody else is doing around you. So like you said, but having all those extra like minerals and stuff that they need, it kind of puts it in your favor to have that rather than just something, deer corn in a feeder.
Well, yeah, because I mean, think about it. I mean, if a deer is craving, a certain mineral or something like that, and they find it, same thing is like you'll see like maybe two pastures, or ag fields, and you'll see deer piled into one, but maybe not the other, and you're kind of like, why are they picking one field over the other? And it could be something as simple as one's got a little more green, one's got a little more grain, and just for that time of the year, it's just easier for them to dodge. I mean, there's reasons that they do what they do, and so for me, it's like I want to try to have as much out there as I can that gives them the opportunity to go, dang, I like that's really good, or I crave that right there, and a lot of salts and things while it's hot, and it's you just never know. Like I say, it's fun, but I enjoy that. You know what I mean? I like being out there, and it's kind of weird. I almost enjoy the preparation as much as I do the hunt. Kind of feel like you're building the stage for what's to come. And but I like getting out and shed hunting. Finding sheds and building the story, building the history. So that if those deer do get to, shooter status, then you maybe got the sets of antlers, prior to that. And, but it's hunting. So you just never know, but, man, it can't get here fast enough, dude. I love it.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Well, dude, I'm glad it got on and got to ask you a few questions and kind of iron out some ideas for myself. And, hopefully some of the listeners took away something from it that they can, put in their preparation for the season. But, man, like I said, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and we'll like I said, do another one maybe, before season starts, and then after season for sure, man, kind of tell some stories and see how it goes for you.
If you got questions on anything, just hit me up, bro. I enjoy helping people as much as I can. I mean, I obviously don't know it all, but you know, it's something I enjoy doing, and just trying different tactics, and you know, then to see things work for other people, and you know, that's it for me. It's you know, I'm looking forward to it, man. Hopefully it gets you a monster this year.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, sounds good.
All right, brother.
See y'all next week, guys.